With his clipped speech, cool smile, and a cigarette dangling impudently from his lips, Laurence Harvey cut the figure of a man born to play the debonair cad. On screen, he was the perfect pinstriped rogue, a charming social climber or callous heartbreaker who could exude irresistible charisma one moment and withering disdain the next. Off-screen, Harvey carefully cultivated an equally enigmatic persona, once saying, "I'm a flamboyant character, an extrovert who doesn't want to reveal his feelings." It was a fitting self-assessment for an actor whose life and career would be defined by dramatic contradictions. Harvey rocketed from a war-torn childhood to Oscar-nominated fame, collecting glamorous friends and enemies in equal measure, and blazing through scandal and success with his trademark cool insouciance, until a cruel fate cut short his story in truly tragic fashion. Welcome to Hollywood Mysteries. Laurence Harvey's journey began a long way from Hollywood. He was born Zvi Moshe Skikne on October 1, 1928 in the provincial town of Žaniškis, Lithuania. The youngest of three sons in a Lithuanian Jewish family, young Zvi's early childhood was soon disrupted by the machinations of history. At age 5, he emigrated with his parents, Ella and Ber Skikne, to South Africa in 1934, escaping the rising dangers in Europe the year after Hitler rose to power in Germany. In Johannesburg, the family adopted an English nickname for the boy, Harry, and he grew up an immigrant youth in a new land. From an early age, the future star showed a restless drive for the spotlight. In his mid-teens, during the height of World War II, Harvey lied about his age and auditioned to join the South African Army's entertainment unit at just 15. The legendary comic actor Sid James, then managing the unit, was impressed by the brash teenager and approved his enlistment. This launched a lifelong friendship between the two men. It was Harvey's first taste of showbiz life, performing for troops in concerts and reviews, and he relished it. Harvey's ambition soon took him to post-war London. In 1946, at 18, he enrolled at the prestigious Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, RADA, to polish his craft. Officially, he was still Harry Skikne then, a far cry from the elegant name that would later grace marquees, and neither he nor his name particularly fit in at RADA. Impatient with formal training, Harvey quit RADA after only 3 months. He was eager to leap into professional acting. He quickly found work in provincial repertory theaters and London stage shows. Now billed as Larry Skikne, he made his West End debut in the play Uprooted in 1947, and also performed with repertory companies in Manchester, where his intense stage presence began to draw notice. Those early performances set him on a path towards film. Sure enough, by 1948, Harvey snagged his very first movie role, a bit part in the low-budget British horror film House of Darkness in 1948. It was a humble cinema debut, but one that came with a pivotal change. The film's distributor balked at the unmarketability of the name Larry Skikne, prompting the young actor to reinvent himself with a more marquee-friendly alias. Thus, Laurence Harvey was born, a name as sleekly anglicized as the persona he aspired to. Accounts vary as to how he chose it. One story has his agent concocting Laurence and Harvey from 2 posh London department stores, Harvey Nichols and Harrods. At the time, Harrods had famously given credit to Laurence Olivier and few other celebrities, a privilege previously reserved for royals only. Another account claims Sid James blurted out Laurence Harvey during a bus ride, and the name simply stuck. However it came about, the rechristening was a fitting bit of self-invention for a man who would remain a master of calculated image. With a new name and a contract in hand, the 20-year-old Harvey steadily built a resume in British films. In 1949, he signed a 2-year deal with the Associated British Picture Corporation and churned out roles in a string of modest productions. He played a fleeing ex-soldier in Man on the Run in 1949 and popped up in the RAF drama Landfall later that year. Small parts continued in 1950, including a policer called Cairo Road, and even a tiny, uncredited appearance in the Hollywood epic The Black Rose starring Tyrone Power. These early roles were hardly memorable, but they gave Harvey a valuable apprenticeship in film. More importantly, he attracted the attention of producer brothers John and James Wolfe at Romulus Films, who saw star potential in the darkly handsome young actor. Romulus signed him to a contract and began grooming him for bigger things. However, the nature of their arrangement would prove to be more complex than merely nurturing a big star. The handsome Harvey was of particular interest to James Wolfe, and he wanted more than just a star on his hands. Before we dive any deeper into the scandalous ways of Laurence Harvey and his climb to the top, I'd like to take a moment to let you know about some major changes I am making to the Hollywood Mysteries Patreon and YouTube member area. First of all, some of you may already know that I had a real nightmare with the Paul Byrne episode, which had to be taken down after it fell foul of YouTube's community guidelines on saying certain words. I know most of my audience are more than wise enough to decide for themselves what they want to hear or not, so this censorship is pretty frustrating. With that in mind, I'll be uploading every episode of Hollywood Mysteries onto the Patreon page where all my members from the $1 tier and above will be able to see them completely uncensored, if and when something like this happens again. But there is even more good news for the Patreon supporters and YouTube members. My weekly Hollywood Histories essays is changing, and I will be narrating it instead of just posting it as text. So you will have 4 extra mini podcasts per month for just $3. I'll be covering all the usual strange and obscure pieces of Hollywood lore, as well as beginning a series dedicated to lesser-known actors who don't quite have enough biographical information for a full episode. You'll be able to hear about the scandalous truth of the narcotics industry in early Hollywood, the pioneering work of Cynic Studios, and many more in upcoming episodes. It will be audio only to begin, but I think a lot of you will enjoy listening to it rather than reading the essays. Higher tiers also get perks such as early access to the main videos and the chance to request a video on your favorite star. For the most part, the perks will be identical on both YouTube and Patreon, but I will leave a link to the Patreon here. Patreon not only doesn't restrict our censorship, they also allow me to keep every penny you generously contribute to running the channel. YouTube, meanwhile, take a pretty generous 30% for themselves. I fully understand some of you are more comfortable and familiar with the YouTube system, and I am delighted to have you as members here. But if you were thinking of switching your support to Patreon, well, that would be even better since they aren't trying to nickel and dime every small-scale creator on the platform. Whichever you choose, your support is amazing, and I really hope you will enjoy all the new exclusive content as a return for everything you've done to keep the channel going. Okay, I think that's everything. Let's return to the salacious rise of Laurence Harvey. Around this time, Harvey's personal life became entangled with his professional ascent. He entered into a passionate relationship with actress Hermione Baddeley, a colorful character actress 2 decades his senior. The odd couple pairing of the refined, ambitious Harvey with the brash, hard-drinking Baddeley raised a few eyebrows, not least because Baddeley was married. Meanwhile, Harvey was also deep into a secret homosexual affair with James Wolfe, and the Wolfe brothers were working just as hard as Baddeley to advance Harvey's career. With homosexuality still outlawed in Britain, inevitably Harvey's relationship with Wolfe would remain a strict secret, and all parties seemed to agree that his relationship with Baddeley was a safe cover in public. Harvey moved in with her, and Hermione took the smitten newcomer under her wing in London's theater scene. She introduced him to influential figures like theatrical producer Basil Dean and helped land him a small role in Hazan at the Cambridge Theatre in 1951. Baddeley even got Harvey involved in a season at Stratford-upon-Avon in 1952. For the hungry young actor from nowhere, Hermione Baddeley's connections were a godsend. She became his live-in partner and a lucky charm for his career, one newspaper noted dryly. But the relationship had more than a transactional tint, and it seems Harvey was taking advantage of his older lover. Baddeley later wisecracked, "After you've lived with Laurence Harvey, nothing in life is ever really too awful again." It wouldn't be long before Harvey's restless eye wandered to someone new. By the mid-1950s, Laurence Harvey was steadily rising in the British film ranks, even if true stardom still eluded him. Romulus Films were eager to capitalize on their protege, and so they cast him in ensemble pictures like Women of Twilight in 1952 and The Good Die Young from 1954, the latter giving Harvey a meaty role alongside Hollywood imports like Gloria Graham. And if you haven't seen my video all about Gloria, I'll link that on screen now and in the description. Critics began to take notice of Harvey's on-screen persona. One review from the era noted a, quote, "languorous sexuality in his performances, an unsettling charisma that hinted at darkness behind his matinee idol looks." On stage, Harvey took on classical roles too. He played Romeo in Renato Castellani's 1954 film adaptation of Romeo and Juliet, and reprised the role in stage productions at Stratford. His Romeo unfortunately garnered mixed reviews. Some found his brooding style ill-suited to Shakespeare's young lover. Unfazed, Harvey chased opportunity wherever it led. He even made his Broadway debut in 1955 with the play Island of Goats, which flopped after a week but earned him a Theatre World Award as a promising newcomer. That year in New York, he also shot a live American TV drama, The Alcoa Hour, and this was his U.S. television debut. The pieces were moving into place for a breakthrough, and it came from a role that would cement Harvey's image as a definitive social climber on film. In 1959, Laurence Harvey vaulted to international fame with a single searing performance. Director Jack Clayton cast the relatively unknown Harvey as Joe Lambton, the ruthlessly ambitious working-class hero of Room at the Top, an adaptation of John Brayne's novel about class and seduction in post-war Britain. Harvey threw himself into the part of Lambton, a young man determined to climb the social ladder by romancing a wealthy industrialist's daughter while carrying on a torrid affair with an older married woman. With his slicked-back hair, sharp suits, and aura of coiled resentment, Harvey was Joe Lambton on screen. Charming yet cruel, hungry yet hollow, the film was a sensation. Room at the Top became the third highest-grossing film in Britain that year and a hit in the United States as well. Critics on both sides of the Atlantic praised Harvey's portrayal of the callous social climber. The role earned him a BAFTA nomination and, most impressively, an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor, a rarity for such a young and new leading man. Though Harvey ultimately did not win the Oscar, the nomination alone announced him as a new star to be reckoned with. Co-star Simone Signoret did take home an Oscar for her role as Joe's tragic lover. Overnight, Harvey was catapulted into the top ranks of British actors, and Hollywood was soon knocking on his door. Ever cultivating his image, the newly famous Harvey did not shy away from lofty self-comparisons. He saw himself joining the pantheon of great British leading men. In fact, one film journal wrote that any young actor who liked to compare himself favorably to Olivier, Gielgud, and Richardson, preferably in the same sentence, was clearly going to find it hard to fit the mold of the era. Harvey's ego, it seemed, was as outsized as his suddenly soaring career. Yet for all the external confidence Harvey was acutely aware of, and defensive about, his polarizing effect on audiences. Someone once asked me, "Why is it so many people hate you?" Harvey recalled in an interview. And I said, "Do they? How super. I'm really quite pleased about it." That arch, insouciant rejoinder became one of his signature quotes, a soundbite that perfectly encapsulated Harvey's devil-may-care attitude. He wore others' contempt almost as a kind of badge of honor, even as he simultaneously pursued their adulation. In any case, Harvey's triumph in Room at the Top opened the gilded doors of Hollywood, but as he basked in his breakthrough, a far less flattering drama was unfolding just out of frame. The newly minted star would soon discover that the climb to the top came with a perilous descent, and that not everyone he encountered on the way up was inclined to cheer for Laurence Harvey's success. He signed on to star in a series of big-budget American films in the early 1960s, and he was keen to solidify his leading man status. The results were a mixed bag, some highs, some lows, and plenty of intrigue. First came John Wayne's epic passion project, The Alamo, in 1960, in which Wayne personally tapped Harvey to play the Texas hero Colonel William Travis. Wayne was impressed by Harvey's aristocratic bearing, perfect, thought the Duke, for the proud commander of the Alamo garrison. On set in the Mexican desert, the unlikely duo formed a mutual admiration society. The gruff all-American icon and the suave Anglo newcomer might have seemed an odd pair, but Harvey held his own with Wayne and was far from intimidated. In fact, the pair developed great respect for one another. The Alamo was a moderate box office success, though its enormous budget meant it barely broke even. Harvey then co-starred with Elizabeth Taylor in MGM's sultry melodrama Butterfield 8, a role that had him playing a wealthy cad opposite Taylor's call-girl character. The film itself met lukewarm reviews, but it gained notoriety when Taylor won her first Oscar for it, which came about amid major tabloid buzz over her off-screen affairs. Harvey's participation in Butterfield 8 further raised his profile, even if Taylor's tour de force eclipsed his contribution. Back in Britain, Harvey tried to maintain his UK credentials as well. He took a role in the 1961 film The Long and the Short and the Tall, replacing Peter O'Toole in a gritty war drama about jungle patrols in Malaya. That production became a battlefield of egos. Harvey notoriously clashed with co-stars Richard Harris and Richard Todd, a conflict that at one point nearly came to blows on set. The fracas fed Harvey's growing reputation as difficult and arrogant. It didn't help that Harris, himself known for a volcanic temper, publicly disparaged Harvey. Still, the movie did well in the UK, proving Harvey could draw audiences even amid controversy. If Room at the Top had typecast Harvey as the quintessential ambitious heel, Hollywood seemed determined to reinforce that persona. He was cast as a callous playboy husband opposite Geraldine Page in Summer and Smoke, a Tennessee Williams adaptation where Harvey's character cruelly mistreats the heroine. His fee by this point had reportedly ballooned to around $300,000 per film, and this was a testament to how in demand he'd become. But Harvey's success came at a price. More and more colleagues were finding him insufferable. Stories circulated of his chronic tardiness to set and generally aloof demeanor. Actress Jane Fonda got a bitter taste while co-starring with Harvey in Walk on the Wild Side in 1962, an ensemble drama about drifters and prostitutes in New Orleans. Sharing the screen with Harvey was an infamously miserable experience for Fonda. Acting with Laurence Harvey is like acting by yourself, only worse, Fonda quipped rather caustically. Her dig captured the sentiment of many who worked with him. Harvey could be so emotionally disconnected and self-involved on set that he may as well have been acting in a vacuum. Fonda's barb made the rounds in Hollywood, and this added to Harvey's negative image as an actor whom co-stars endured rather than enjoyed. Yet, if Harvey's off-screen behavior was aggravating his co-stars, on-screen he continued to find intriguing roles. In 1962, he took on what would become one of his best-remembered performances, the brainwashed Korean War veteran Raymond Shaw in John Frankenheimer's Cold War thriller The Manchurian Candidate. Starring opposite Frank Sinatra and Angela Lansbury, Harvey was eerily effective as the hollow-eyed, hypnotized assassin at the story's center. His naturally cool, detached aura was put to perfect use. As one critic wrote, the role required him to act like a zombie, and many reviewers cited it as Harvey's first truly convincing performance. The film itself, a taut, paranoid masterpiece, was a hit and later came to be regarded as a classic of the era. For Harvey, The Manchurian Candidate provided a brief vindication, proof that his often criticized emotional remoteness could be an asset under the right circumstances. Even Sinatra, a man not known to suffer fools, developed a grudging respect for Harvey's work in the film and maintained a cordial relationship with him afterwards. Still riding high in '62, Harvey ventured into lighter fare as well, starring as one of the Brothers Grimm in MGM's big-budget fantasy, The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm. His portrayal earned him a Golden Globe nomination, though the movie underperformed at the box office. He also indulged a bit of artistic experimentation, recording a spoken-word poetry album with jazz accompaniment that year, an esoteric side project that let loose Harvey's cultured interests beyond mainstream cinema. In interviews, he spoke grandly of his Hollywood fortunes. "I have suddenly found the gates of Hollywood open to me," he proclaimed in 1962. It seemed Laurence Harvey had achieved everything he'd set out to: wealth, fame, and the company of Hollywood's elite. Yet even as he strode red carpets, the rumors about Harvey's off-screen conduct never ceased. Back in England, Harvey had scandalized polite society by abruptly leaving Hermione Baddeley and openly romancing actress Margaret Leighton, who was then married to publisher Max Reinhardt. Leighton divorced her husband and eventually married Harvey in 1957, in a ceremony atop the Rock of Gibraltar, no less. For a time, they were a golden couple of the British stage and screen, Leighton an acclaimed theatrical star, Harvey the dashing film idol. But Harvey's wandering heart did not rest. The marriage to Leighton was tempestuous and short-lived. They divorced in 1961. No sooner had that marriage dissolved than Harvey set his sights on another high-profile match. In 1968, he wed Joan Perry, a former actress best known as the widow of mogul Harry Cohn, the all-powerful Columbia Pictures chief who had died a decade earlier. Marrying the widow of a Hollywood studio baron only amplified Harvey's image as a social climber in real life. Perry was over 15 years Harvey's senior, and fabulously wealthy. Cynics muttered that Harvey had an eye on her bank book as much as her heart. Fair assessment or not, the marriage to Joan Perry brought Harvey into the highest echelon of Tinseltown society, for a time anyway. But within a few years, Harvey managed to create yet another scandal that torpedoed this advantageous partnership. By the late 1960s, Harvey's personal life had become as melodramatic as one of his films. He embarked on an affair with Pauline Stone, a chic British fashion model, even while still married to Perry. In 1969, Stone became pregnant with Harvey's child. The situation was a tabloid editor's dream. The suave movie star husband of a Hollywood widow secretly fathering a baby with a younger model. Harvey at first tried to keep the affair and pregnancy quiet, but the truth emerged soon enough. He separated from Joan Perry, they would divorce in 1972, and acknowledged a baby girl named Domino, born to Pauline Stone in 1969. In a gesture that was a little romance and a lot of pragmatism, Harvey married Pauline Stone in 1972 and even adopted her young daughter from a previous relationship. He was by now striving to present a picture of domestic stability, but Hollywood's gossip mills were unforgiving. Harvey's image as a cad seemed confirmed by his marital musical chairs, a fact not lost on his contemporaries. Years later, British actor John Fraser would bluntly describe Harvey as, quote, a whore who used relationships for personal advancement. The truth was likely more complex. Friends like David Ambrose recalled Harvey as a vulgar, insecure chancer, who nonetheless was funny and honest about his many faults. In other words, Harvey was fully aware of his own opportunism and ego, and even found humor in it. Such self-awareness, however, did little to endear him to colleagues who bore the brunt of his less appealing traits. As the 1960s progressed, cracks in Harvey's career began to show alongside the turmoil in his personal life. He made his directorial debut with 1963's The Ceremony, a dark crime drama in which he also starred, hoping to prove himself as a filmmaker. The film, shot on location in Spain, turned out to be a commercial and critical disaster, with audiences staying away. Harvey's theatrical endeavors also met setbacks. In 1964, he headlined a lavish London production of the musical Camelot, playing King Arthur, a role that required a warmth and vocal strength some felt were beyond his range. The reviews were mediocre, and Harvey's foray into musical theater did little to boost his standing. Even worse, a high-profile film project that should have been a triumph devolved into total chaos. He had long been attached to a remake of Human Bondage opposite Kim Novak, but that shoot became troubled in the extreme. Harvey and Novak fought bitterly on set, to the point where director Henry Hathaway quit mid-production in frustration at Novak in particular. Many would blame the evident antipathy between the actors for the film's failure, and it's palpable on-screen that they did not much like one another. Both were miscast, but some arrogant direction hoping to, quote, improve on the Somerset Maugham masterpiece hardly helped matters, especially as this improvement amounted to trying to make Novak sexier and more seductive than the complex and fascinating Mildred character ever was in the novel, a change Novak fought hard against. As for her relationship with Harvey, they did find some common ground in their mutual loathing of Hathaway's replacement, Ken Hughes. Her later words revealed some of the director's eccentricities and outright obnoxious behavior. Novak said Hughes was really a case. I tried to talk about the character with him, but he just wasn't interested. He walked around the set constantly pounding a set of bongo drums. You would ask him a question and he would slap the drums. Meanwhile, the ongoing secret sexual drama that had been unfolding all these years between Harvey and producer James Wolfe reached a breaking point. Wolfe was in love with Harvey, but evidently the feelings were not mutual. Heartbroken by Harvey's incessant pursuit of other men and women, Wolfe took an overdose of barbiturates during the filming of Human Bondage, although he did survive the suicide attempt. Another thing that did not improve the atmosphere on set was a shocking and terrifying kidnapping attempt that took place during filming. Bizarrely, student radicals in London made kidnap threats against both Harvey and Novak, and although their exact cause is now lost to the sands of time, this was a real threat in the era of celebrity kidnappings and generally lacked security. It was a surreal footnote that only added to the bad karma of the project. The film limped to completion under Hughes but flopped upon release, leaving Harvey with yet another black mark. Reviews were savage, and he and Novak bore the brunt of the ridicule. He followed it with The Outrage, a remake of Akira Kurosawa's Rashomon co-starring Paul Newman. That too was a critical and commercial dud. By the mid-60s, the hits of Harvey's early career were starting to look like lightning in a bottle. To be fair, there were still occasional bright spots. In 1965, Harvey reprised his signature role of Joe Lambton in Life at the Top, a sequel to Room at the Top, and delivered what many considered one of his finest later performances. That same year, he had a brief but pivotal appearance in John Schlesinger's acclaimed drama, Darling, starring Julie Christie. Harvey's role in Darling was small, but his name helped secure financing for the film, a reminder that despite recent flops, he still carried clout. Increasingly, however, Harvey's screen projects were veering toward the eccentric. He co-produced and starred in obscure fare like The Spy with a Cold Nose in 1966, a frankly silly James Bond parody, and took roles in European quasi-exploitation films such as Rebus in 1969 and Camp Fum Brom in 1970, which did little for his reputation. His once white-hot star was undeniably dimming. If Harvey felt the chill of his fading career, he did not show it publicly. Ever the fighter, he took an aggressive and characteristically unconventional step to elbow his way back into a prestigious project. When director Tony Richardson began filming The Charge of the Light Brigade, Harvey realized the script was partially based on a book he happened to own the rights to. Sniffing leverage, Harvey's camp immediately filed a lawsuit on behalf of the author for infringement. The result was a legal settlement that forced Richardson's production company to pay Harvey and, crucially, to cast him in the film. Richardson reluctantly gave Harvey a small role as a Russian prince, for which Harvey was paid handsomely, reportedly £60,000. But Richardson got the last laugh at Harvey's brazen attempt to extort and manipulate his project. Harboring no fondness at all for the imposed star, the director cut nearly all of Harvey's scenes from the final movie, leaving only a few frames where Harvey appears indistinctly in a theater audience. Industry legend even has it that Richardson filmed Harvey's scenes French, a term meaning without any film in the camera, purely to satisfy the contract. The Light Brigade incident became Hollywood lore, a cautionary tale of how far Harvey would go to insert himself into the limelight and how spectacularly it could backfire. By 1968, Harvey's days as a bankable leading man were waning, but he found a measure of redemption behind the camera. That year, he was acting in a Cold War spy thriller called A Dandy in Aspic, when its director, the venerable Anthony Mann, died mid-production. Harvey stepped up to complete the film as director, and the finished movie, a movie tale of double agents co-starring Mia Farrow, is often cited as his last effective cinema role, and it felt tailor-made for his persona as a man leading a double life. Critics were largely unkind, but some recognized that the film's themes of identity and deception played to Harvey's strengths. Indeed, Harvey's own life by then had shades of double identity. The public charmer versus the private cynic, the family man versus the rumored hedonist. For around this time, rumors finally grew louder that Harvey's appetite for pleasure was not confined to the opposite sex. His friend Frank Sinatra's longtime valet, George Jacobs, later claimed that Harvey made sexual advances toward him on visits to Sinatra's home, fully aware that Sinatra knew and tolerated Harvey's closeted homosexuality. British actor John Fraser wrote in his memoir that Harvey's true long-term love was James Wolfe. In an era when such matters were typically kept strictly secret, Harvey's flamboyance certainly invited speculation. Sinatra himself, according to Jacobs, joked in the ribald and unfiltered language of the era about Harvey's handicaps of being, to quote Sinatra, a homo, a Jew, and a Polak. An offensive wisecrack certainly, but one implying Sinatra understood and even sympathized on some level with the multiple biases Harvey faced. True or not, Harvey never publicly addressed the rumors of his sexuality. He continued to present the image of a consummate ladies' man even as those closest to him quietly acknowledged a more complex reality. As the 1960s gave way to the 70s, Harvey settled into an intriguing, if somewhat reduced phase of his career. He was no longer a fixture in A-list Hollywood productions, but he remained busy with character parts, TV guest roles, and occasional forays into production. In 1969, he made a cheeky cameo as himself in the anarchic comedy The Magic Christian, appearing in a memorable gag where he performs Hamlet's soliloquy on stage, only to break into a campy striptease mid-monologue. Audiences were shocked and amused to see Harvey send up his own dashing image in such a brazen way, peeling off his costume to wild applause in the film. It was as if he had always been in on the joke of his own persona. That same year, he lent his voice as narrator to a Soviet-produced biopic of Tchaikovsky, demonstrating his continued ties to art house projects beyond the Anglo-American mainstream. On television, he delivered one of his most talked-about performances in a 1972 episode of Rod Serling's Night Gallery. Titled The Caterpillar, the story cast Harvey as a scheming colonial officer who arranges to have a deadly earwig insect dropped into a rival's ear, only for a twist of fate to punish him instead. Harvey's portrayal of the cold-blooded man gradually driven to madness by fear is often cited by horror aficionados as one of the most chilling TV performances of its era. It was a fitting role for Harvey, a suave villain undone by his own machinations. What he could not know was that destiny had already penned his final act. As Harvey plotted an ambitious comeback, a far more personal battle was brewing within him, one that not even his considerable willpower could overcome. In the summer of 1973, whispers began circulating that Laurence Harvey was seriously ill. The 44-year-old actor, once the picture of urban vitality, had grown alarmingly thin. Rumors suggested he may have cancer, but Harvey characteristically tried to downplay any concerns. In August of that year, he insisted to the press that he was fine, in fact busier than ever with new projects lined up. Indeed, Harvey had 2 films in pre-production that he was set to direct and star in, one a drama about the infamous Kitty Genovese case, and another a caper comedy titled Cockatrice. He also harbored hopes of finishing The Deep, an ill-fated thriller he'd been shooting with director Orson Welles and Jeanne Moreau, which had been stalled by financing problems. In typical fashion, Harvey faced the future with flamboyant optimism, piling his plate with work as if sheer momentum could ward off misfortune. But no amount of suave bravado could alter the diagnosis. Harvey was suffering from an aggressive form of gastrointestinal cancer. A heavy smoker and drinker for most of his life, he had unwittingly courted this illness, and by the time it was discovered, it was far advanced. The final scene came tragically fast. On November 25, 1973, Laurence Harvey died at his home in Hampstead, London, losing his battle at the age of just 45. The news stunned the film world. However controversial his reputation, few realized that the end was so near. In Hollywood, his friend Elizabeth Taylor, who had remained close to Harvey ever since bonding with him on Butterfield 8, was devastated. Just 3 weeks before, Taylor had visited Harvey in London, intuitively sensing it might be a last goodbye. Upon his death, she issued a heartfelt public statement. "He was one of the people I really loved in this world. He was part of the sun. For everyone who loved him, the sun is a bit dimmer." Such an elegy from Taylor spoke volumes. For all of Harvey's flaws and enemies he accumulated, those who truly knew and loved him found something genuinely warm at his core, something bright that was now extinguished. Laurence Harvey's body was flown to the United States, where he was laid to rest at Santa Barbara Cemetery in California. In a poignant twist, his daughter Domino would later share this grave, ensuring that in death father and child would not be separated by the Atlantic. Domino tragically also died young in 2005, aged 35, after a troubled life that saw her become a bounty hunter and struggle with fentanyl addiction, the drug that ultimately killed her. At a memorial service in California hosted by Elizabeth Taylor and actor Peter Lawford, friends gathered to share stories of Harvey. The New York Times in its obituary summed up Harvey's screen persona as the screen's perfect pinstriped cad, writing how he could make aristocratic boredom riveting and charm audiences even as he broke hearts. Tellingly, the paper observed that the devil-may-care image Harvey carefully fostered off-screen was not so far removed from the roles he played. In his own words, Harvey admitted as much. "To bare your soul to the world, I find unutterably boring. I think part of our profession is to have a quixotic personality." It was the final self-portrait of a man who lived behind a stylish mask, an actor who turned his life into a performance and vice versa. He was, as one commentator put it, a broken man's specialist, an actor unafraid to play loathsome or aloof characters, tapping into an authentic vein of self-doubt and self-loathing that gave these portrayals a singular edge. In an industry that often demands warmth and likability, Harvey dared to be cold and complex. He once joked that he was pleased to be hated, but perhaps that was a defensive point of pride. He had carved a niche that few others could fill. He was part scoundrel, part charmer, haunted by insecurity yet brazenly self-assured. A man who lived and died by his own complex code. Standing apart, cigarette alight, and that caddish smile playing at the corner of his lips. That's about all I have for you this week. Do remember to hit like if indeed you did like this episode, and why not share the video with a friend. Until next time, sweet dreams.